I was in a playwriting group at the time during COVID. And I came to them one night and said, hey, I got this feedback and I'm thinking about, converting the script into a novel. What do you guys think? And they're like, you're nuts. They're like, it's clearly a musical. Like, why would you do that? And then once I started experimenting, and I remember the first night I came back, I was, I'm going to do it anyway. And I shared the first chapter that I wrote from Rose's perspective, which is the second protagonist that's inspired by my great Aunt Laura's life. And I read that, I shared that night at the playwriting group, and they went bananas over it. They were like, oh my God, that is the best thing you have ever written. And we thought you were crazy, but you got to keep going. You're on to something.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation.
Hey everybody, it's Jeannie. Thank you so much for being back here with me at the Warriors at Work show. Did you ever have a time in your life when you thought it was just too late to bring something forward? That moment in your life, oh, it's past, can't do that thing because of, fill in the blank on the variety of reasons. So I want you to stop right now and see if you can change the story. It's never too late to follow your dreams, says Allyson Hernandez. Today, you get to hear from my dear friend and confidant, Allyson Hernandez, share the vision and the beautiful journey about this incredible book called Ballad of Dreams that she brought to the world this past year. This is not just any story or any book. This is Allyson's take on an extraordinary life of her grandmother in the 1940s. It's a novel with music. You see, Allyson is an author, a composer, an actress, a singer, and a mom, as well as a former HR executive turned executive coach. And she is bringing the story to the world with incredible energy and enthusiasm. And her fierceness is being picked up by many different people and personalities. Just in the short time she released this book, she's already had a spot on the Tamron Hall Show where she got to talk about this book, sing live, and share her inspirational story. Working with this soundtrack right now, Allyson's in the studio with some amazing, well-known singers and actors in the theater community. And in my opinion, this is a story truly about pushing through the self-doubt, which we all have, and deciding to bring our whole self to the world. And I just look at this conversation as just pure inspiration with a capital I. And it is my tribute to this beautiful, beautiful soul that I get to call my friend. May this time that you spend listening to this give you a little extra energy, maybe a little extra push, or maybe even some courage and creativity to go after whatever lights you up. Enjoy. Allyson Hernandez, oh my God, woman. So friggin' excited to have this conversation with you.
I'm always excited to have a conversation with you, Jeannie. So bring it.
So I was thinking about this, and so we have known each other for over a decade. I have seen so many iterations of Allyson. I've watched you in the corporate seat. I've watched you in a development seat when you were creating and managing and putting all these amazing things out into the world. Then I played a part in the transition into coaching. And then now here you are. You have pulled together all of these aspects of yourself, your life,
and you're living in this really big, beautiful way. And so that's why I called this conversation Lifing It with Allyson Hernandez, because
Love it.
that's what we're going to be doing. Let's break this puppy down, because anybody that's listening or watching might be toying with the idea of becoming an entrepreneur or bringing forward something that is a soul calling. How do I bring that out into the world? And you are like the number one person I can think of where you're like, yep, that's what it is. And here's how I'm going to do it. And it's scary as hell, but I'm doing it anyway. So we're going to talk about that. So here's where I want to start. I was looking.
She says with the evil
grin. I smiled because of course I look people up and do a lot of research for these things, but I was like, you call yourself I'm an author, I'm an executive, I'm a career and life coach, I'm an actor, I'm a singer, I'm a composer, and I'm a mom. So which one do you identify most with and why?
Oh,
I should have made you sing your answer. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's funny. I would say all of them. All of them. And I started using this phrase that I borrowed with high esteem and honor from Marie Forleo of being a multi-passionate and being a multi-passionate creative. And I think people just get confused when I start to rattle off all of those titles, quite frankly. So sometimes it's easier to just say, I'm a multi-passionate creative and entrepreneur. And then I can explain what the heck that means. But at my core, I'm an artist, I'm an artist, I'm a performer, but I'm also a development junkie and I love to learn. So all of those parts of me make me who I am. And when each one of them is being activated, that's when I'm my happiest. I can't just have one of those buckets, moving forward. Like all of them need to be activated to be me, like to be really me.
Yeah. Well, talking about being really you, I mean, you are so authentic and heartfelt and honest and powerful and direct too. Like, so you blend all these parts of yourself to, I think, to integrate all those things that you just said. You've really done an incredible job of being so honest and raw and real to the world. And you're getting so many incredible accolades and acknowledgments because of that level of power and authenticity that you're bringing to the world, or as you call it, extra.
Yes, that I am.
So let's talk a little bit about this journey. You decided to expand your footprint into the world and you wrote a book.
I did.
Okay. Now, what I want to do is just to clarify for everybody. When you and I first met, you were an executive in HR at a very, very large organization. And I remember even early on, we were having these conversations where you're like, but I'm also this singer and I'm a composer and I have so much to offer the world and I'm stuck in this large corporation and I've always wanted to toy with. And then you transitioned into another role where you got to create and develop really powerful programs for up and coming talent. Then you decided to transition and say, no, I really want to work one-on-one. I want to do this executive coaching thing. And then you had wild success with that. And you're like, no, wait a second. I have this calling within me where I want to bring something out into the world. And then I remember the conversation when you're like, you know what? There's a book in here. So tell us why a book and why this book? Because this book is really unique.
Yeah. So the book really created a life of its own. I joke with one of my poet friends that I was on this trajectory, right? I started writing a musical. So the book started as a musical. At the time, it was called Mother of the Century. It's inspired by my grandmother's life and my great aunt's life, really meshed with my own. And I had been writing the musical and composing the music and, had several readings of it in New York City and, got to hear it and see actors like read the words that I wrote, which was like thrilling, and hear them sing the songs that I composed, which was even more thrilling. And then COVID happened and like there was no theater and theater literally shut down. And I didn't know what to do with the project, and I got feedback from 3 different people that it read like a novel. And I remember, the first time I got that feedback, it just stopped me in my tracks, and, I didn't receive the feedback as a positive, even though there was so much positivity in this one piece of feedback that I received. And it stopped me cold. Like, I stopped writing. I literally put the musical on the shelf, and I had so much self-doubt. I was like, I don't know what to do with this project. It's not a book, it's a musical. It's filled with music that's like at the heart and soul of this story. And then when I heard that feedback for the third time, that like, this really could be a cool book, and especially like with there being no theater right now, like you could probably get it published much easier than you could get it to Broadway. Have you thought about it? And so I finally like leaned into that feedback after processing it a lot. And I said, okay, like the universe is clearly telling me, like, this is what I would joke with my poet friend, that like the musical would be like, I want to be a book. And I'm like, but I'm a musical. But I want to be a book. And like these two, creatives in my head were fighting it out. And I finally said, yes, okay, you want to be a book. So let's let you be a book. And so that's how it happened. I started just like experimenting and converting each scene into a chapter. I had no idea what I was doing, like no idea. The differences in styles from playwriting to prose are drastically different, but I'm an avid reader and I love historical fiction. So I know what a book should sound like, and then I fell into this program. This program fell into my lap that partnered me with developmental editors that would help me like transform the musical script into a book. And I was like, okay, hells yeah, let's go. Let's do this. Like there was not one hesitation. And a year later, I have a book.
So from start to finish, how long did it take?
From start to finish of writing the musical process, it's been 4 years. So from when I started, was the year I turned 40. I am now 44. And the book process took less than a year. It was almost like 10 months, maybe less than that. It's a blur. It was last year.
Wow. And when you think about, early on, tell us a little bit about who are those people that you brought in to really help you put this out into the world? And I was kind of curious also, what were some of the reactions of people that were in your circle when you started to talk about this?
Well, the initial reactions, I remember I was in a playwriting group at the time, during COVID. And I came to them one night and said, hey, I got this feedback and I'm thinking about, converting the script into a novel. What do you guys think? And they're like, you're nuts. They're like, it's clearly a musical. Like, why would you do that? And then once I started like, experimenting, and I remember the first night I came back, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Like, thanks for your feedback. And I'm going to do it anyway. And I shared, the first chapter that I wrote from Rose's perspective, which is the second protagonist that's inspired by my great Aunt Laura's life. And I read that, I shared that night at the playwriting group, and they like went bananas over it. They were like, oh my God, that is the best thing you have ever written. And we thought you were crazy, but like, you got to keep going. Like you're onto something. And this like 2 points of view from these 2 very different women. Yeah, like we dig it. Like go for it. So that was really cool. So I had that creative community through part of the book writing process, to share with them and get their perspective.
And did you have other people? I mean, you obviously grew up in the theater community. You were a theater major in college. So you have some pretty famous friends too.
I do.
How did they play a role in the early days of creating this? Because I'm asking that because I know you have a very, very strong belief in community and networks and really going back and forth and being strongly connected with reciprocity, but your network was really, really important to you. So tell us how they played a role here.
Yeah. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, the role that they played. I joke that, so I went to Syracuse. I'm an SU alum, and we have this phrase. I don't really know who came up with it. Maybe I did. I don't know. But the SU Mafia. And it's like,
Oh my God, that's awesome.
it's literally like the SU drama mafia. And like women and men and friends who were like brothers and sisters to me in college, some of them who I hadn't spoken to or seen in like a decade or more, they just show up, they just show up. And when they show up with so much love. I'm gonna cry thinking about it, but
Mm,
and generosity, like
mm.
with their talent. And that, of course, it wouldn't be a conversation with Jeannie and Allyson if Allyson didn't cry. So here we go.
It's your power and your beauty coming forth. I mean, this is your gift. Is you live and love very deeply, and you also, I mean, to me, it also is incredible example of, when people talk about, I'm here for your success, I'm here for your path in life, and that is a beautiful example of how people really live what they preach,
Yeah.
and you do that for other people too. So I think it's
Yeah. And
beautiful.
I think that's part of being part of a creative community is like, what it took to get that success.
Yeah.
Like, and some of my friends that have known me since I was 18, like, and now they're seeing me at this stage in my life having success in the creative world, and like they love theater just as much as I do, like a lot of them are on Broadway right now, and like they're going to be on my album. Like, and they would do it for nothing just because they love me and because they
Mm,
love musicals and they love being part of the creative process. And I'm like so honored that I can actually pay them
yeah.
to not just like share their talent with me, but to share it, with the world. Um, is just so awesome. So I cannot wait. Like, I have rehearsals with my SU Mafia family in a few weeks to get in the room in New York and practice these songs that we're going to record together. Which I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun.
What were some of the obstacles early on that you had to overcome?
Yeah.
So what definitely was not all rainbows and unicorns.
Oh, no. No, 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 for sure. Oh my goodness. There were tons of obstacles. I mean, I think the biggest obstacle halfway through the process was definitely getting that feedback that it wasn't a musical, and having to sit with that and like really sit with it and process what did that mean. And I also remember getting like, sending my script to a producer and like getting a rejection email that said like, hey, I read like 10 pages and it's just not for me. Like, I'm not into kids. His exact feedback was like, I don't do children in theater, so like, this is not for me. I'm like, well, this is about a woman who had 13 kids. So if you're not into children, then you're probably not the right producer for this project,
Right.
But I remember getting that note, and it was the same day of like this huge Christmas concert that I was in. And I had to shove that rejection like so far down. I'm like, I gotta go perform for like an hour. I gotta go sing my face off and like sing Christmas songs and like
Mm.
inspire people with, the spirit of Christmas. And after I had this conversation with one of my good friends who's a Broadway actor, and I always tell him this, that like I never forget this conversation. And he said, I said, who am I kidding? Like, who the heck am I kidding that I like think I'm a writer? I'm like, I'm not a writer. Like, why am I even trying? And he was like, Allyson, writers are just people who write things. And I was like, could not, laughing through tears and wine, in that moment. But I come back to that. It's like, dude, like anybody could be a writer. Like anyone can be a creator. You just have to create. You just have to do it. That actually
Mm.
makes you the thing that you're trying to be. But that was like a dark moment, of rejection, of like, people don't want what I'm selling, or they don't want my creative project, or they don't want it. So what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
Um,
It reminds me, I was talking to someone who led a startup, and in the early days of the startup, which now the startup is no longer a startup and they're wildly successful. But I was like, what were the early days of the pitches like? And she said, well, it's like having a baby, and you bring your baby into the room and everyone keeps telling you, your baby's ugly. Your baby's not
yes.
good enough.
Yes.
Your baby's
Yes.
stupid. That's a bad
Mhm.
idea. And you're
Right.
not at all a good mom for that
Yeah.
baby. And you have to take it in
Mhm.
and trust that just because that's their opinion doesn't mean it's fact. And it doesn't mean that you're not a good person and that you're not capable. And she's like, but it's the hardest thing to take that in and to carry forward. So I just want to acknowledge you
Yeah.
for your perseverance and your ambition to keep driving forward and trusting that calling, because the book is beautiful. It is so well written, and I've
Thank
never
you.
read anything like it, by the way.
Mm.
I could imagine it on a stage and imagine the characters coming to life through a lot of the songs. Um, so let's talk about that, because what do you see? There's so much going on in the book and so many incredible characters, but
Mm.
like, what are the key messages in the book? Like when you were thinking about, I need to relay these key things, what came to
Yeah.
mind?
Well, the first was, one of the key songs in the book, book musical, which is "It's Never Too Late,"
Mm.
and so that's definitely, a really important key theme that I want to inspire anyone who reads it, but especially women, that it's never too late to follow your dreams. It's never too late to achieve a dream that you never thought you even had. It's never too late to reinvent yourself, to reinvent your life, to reinvent your dreams, to create new dreams, at any stage, at any age. So that's like at the core, like really, one of the major, major themes. Um, I think there's also like key questions that I want people to be asking themselves. Um, and it's questions that I was asking myself through the writing process, right? So, working with lots of other writers over the past year, you realize that like you write the book that you need to read.
Mm.
And it's as an artist, you're like, all right, there's something that I'm wrestling with that needs to come out. And, depending on what your art form is, it might come out in different ways. It could be a song, it could be a script, it could be a poem, it could be a painting. For me, it was like all of them, not a painting, but, it was a script, it was a song, it was a book, it was all those things. But it was really the questions of motherhood and dreams and, can you have it all? And who am I if I'm not a mom? Who am I? As an artist and a mom, and what are all the different parts of me that make me me, but that don't define me, right? And that, really leaning into the idea that we are not just one thing, that no one is just one thing. We're not wired that way, right? Like we as humans are complex and there's multiple parts to us that make us who we are. So I think that's another key theme, that I want people to embrace, that we're not just, the roles that, we're not just our titles. We're so much more than our titles of what
Mm.
defines us. Um, I also think, the idea of filling our own cups, which is also another song in the book, um, and recognizing that, following your dreams or taking care of yourself in whatever way you need to that fills you up is not selfish. And that if you're not, filling yourself up and filling your own cup, nobody else is going to do it for you. Like you are responsible for being the one to pour the cup,
Mhm.
to pour whatever you need in it, to fill you up. And I think as women, a lot of us just don't. And we think it's being selfish, when it's really, self preservation. And if you're not full, you can't take care of anyone else. You can't be your best. You can't be the best mom, the best wife, the best boss, the best creative, if you're not full. So those are just a couple.
Yeah.
There's a million more. But
You just reminded me, there was a great expression that I learned in a yoga class, and the yoga teacher said, "I'm not saying no to you. I'm saying yes to me."
mm-hmm. I love
And
that.
I just remember that all that, and wherever your feet are, that's where you are. And I'm like, "Oh,
Mm,
two good things to remind me to stay present and
yeah.
not saying no to you. I'm saying yes to me."
Mm.
Is really, really good. So let's talk about some of these characters, because boy, do you go to some depths. Woo! You cover generational differences,
Mm,
life moments, like with a variety of emotions, different time, a totally different time period, pre-World War II.
mm.
And you were able to really capture a lot of the really complexities of these relationships and life events. How did you go to these depths, Allison? Like, were you also reading psychology books on the side to say, this syndrome would cause this particular
No.
behavior? Like, where did this come from?
Definitely not reading books about psychology. Um, oh, well, I mean, as an actor, I have a lot of depth to me and I have a lot of emotions that I can tap into. I think probably the biggest tool that I used in order to go there was to tap into my own sense memory and to um, physically put myself in the shoes of my characters, but do that in a way where I could tie it back to something that was similar that happened in my life, right? So, without, spoilers for whoever hasn't read Ballad of Dreams yet, and you're going to after this podcast, there's a lot of themes of loss, and there are challenges of fertility and loss with fertility, and I've had my own challenges, and I've had my own, difficult pregnancies. And I've had lots of friends who have had, really, really horrible losses. And so I had to tap into those memories of, not just like stories that friends have told me and their own pain of loss, but also my experiences of that as well. My oldest Ollie, when I was pregnant with him, I had a blood clot. And I bled for 6 months of my pregnancy. Okay, we didn't need to go there on your podcast. If you want to edit that, you can.
No, it's real.
But I did. I had this blood clot, um, and I remember, like the fear around that, and not knowing what was going to happen, and doctors constantly telling me you're going to lose him, and it being the first time, a first time mom, and and having a miscarriage before him, and so there were just a lot of moments in my past, and just like flashes of emotions that I could tap into, and then
Mm.
imagine the rest, right? Like tap into that emotion, and then create the world around it, even though it wasn't my circumstances, and it might have been a different time period. And um, but yeah, so I mean, a lot of that deep emotional work was tapping into my own
Oh,
past, my own pain, or remembering, other people's pain, and then writing about it. I think the biggest aha for me in that journey was like, I can't write about it if I can't make myself feel it. Like,
mm,
if I can't physically feel the emotion that I'm trying to convey, that this character is feeling, I can't write it authentically. Like, it won't be truthful. So I have to go there. And so that was hard. There were a lot of there's a lot of loss in this book in all different ways, whether it's loss of a dream, loss of children, loss of family members. And so I had to put myself into those moments in my past, to
mm.
go there to write it.
Was there one in particular that was really difficult for you to write about?
I think the one, again, I don't want to talk about the whole storyline, but I think that the challenges with pregnancies
Mhm.
definitely was hard to go back and remember those moments. Um, and also, loss of family members. I mean, there were so many, honestly, like And I was writing all of the loss parts at the same time. So,
Heavy.
it was a rough, like, it was like a rough month where, I knew I had to write a chapter and I kept avoiding it because I knew what it was going to be about and I didn't want to go there. But what's that saying? The only way out is through.
Yes.
So,
So true. When I was reading it, I was thinking of your grandmother and your aunt. Grandmother was Marie and your aunt was
yes.
Laura.
Mhm.
What do you think they would say if they were sitting here right now in this conversation listening to you and they'd read it? What comes to mind?
Yeah. I think they would be proud, first and foremost. I do think they would be very proud of what I've accomplished. I hope that they would say, yeah, like you nailed it, like you nailed what I felt, or you nailed the circumstances of what we as women in the 40s were up against. I hope that they would say that. I think then, the rose-colored glasses part of my grandmother would be like, it didn't really happen that way, or like, she'd be like, it wasn't right. Like she would totally like downplay it and like make it like glamorous, and again, I took, a lot of creative liberties with the story and the plot line. And so while it's inspired by real people and real events, there's a lot of me in these characters and there's a lot of my life experiences that I don't know if they really happened, but they either happened to me or they happened in my imagination.
Yeah.
And so now they're in the book. And I was laughing last night at this library talk where I said, my family always says, like, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
And that's like if it's going to be more entertaining or more dramatic for the storyline to go this way, well, that's what I did.
Oh my God, that's like a mantra in my Irish family.
It was same.
It's all about, my husband's English and he's always like, that's not exactly accurate. I'm like, no, it's all about
Right.
how you relay the story.
Exactly.
If it's
Exactly.
entertaining, we're going with it.
Exactly.
So tell us, you've had some amazing successes
Thank
since this
you.
book has come out. So tell us what that path has been like, including being on a show.
Yeah. That was crazy. That was a dream come true. So, I was very clear pre-publishing that I knew that I wanted to build a reputation for myself in New York City. I wanted people to know my name, especially in the theater community. And so I knew that I couldn't do that by myself. So I did invest in a publicist, and they did a fabulous job. And there were weeks where like nothing was kind of happening, and then, I got multiple articles in BroadwayWorld.com. And for me as like a theater geek, like that was like it. I was like, okay, I've made it. All right, great. Investment worth it. Check, I'm now on BroadwayWorld.com. So that was huge for me, to be recognized within the Broadway community in a very different way, right? Because it's about my book, which is also a musical. So that was a first like huge win for me. And then towards the tail end of this publicist contract, really like the day after our contract ended was when I got the call that the Tamron Hall Show wanted to talk to me. So I had to do multiple rounds of like pre-interviews and, and like a week, no, not even a week, a day later, like 24 hours later, they were like, okay, it's a yes, you're going to be on, on this day. And, the bigger win of all of that was, the executive producer was like, would you like to sing on the show? And I was like, let me think about that. What? Like sing like on national television? Yes. The answer is a hell's yes. So that came later. That took a few more days to get approval for. But once that happened, that was like, oh my God, like, holy crap. Like, this isn't just an interview. Like, this is me performing my original song on national television. If I could get a bigger stage, like, that is a bigger stage than a Broadway stage. That is a much bigger stage. So the whole experience was amazing. It was intense. It was like about 2 weeks of like lead time and like prep time. And, and the day itself was like a whirlwind. But it was so much fun. And everyone at the Tam fam, that's what they call themselves. That's really what they are. Like, they're a family. They are so kind, and they made me feel so important, like so important, and so cared for, which was awesome. And the day itself, it flew. Like, it literally flew. It was like, it's like your wedding day, like you blink and it's over. Yeah, so it was amazing. And Tamron was so kind and so cool and down to earth. And I told myself before that interview, I'm like, listen, just pretend like you're at a bar having a drink with a girlfriend,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And that helped. Like, that definitely helped my nerves, because believe it or not, I was not nervous about singing. Like, I was not nervous at all. Like, I was so grounded and at home. Like, there was just this overwhelming sense of being at home on stage, because that's my feet on the ground.
Like, you were ready. You were ready.
Yeah, I was.
You were ready, and you did the work. And
I was.
So what's it been like since you've been on that show?
I mean, ups and downs, right? Like, I'm still a normal person. Like, I laugh about, like, now I know what famous people feel like, right? Like, I was at, car line pickup the next day, at my son's school. And like, one of the moms was like, she was on TV yesterday. I'm like, right. And I'm here today in my jeans and my sneakers, like, just like all of you.
Life in it.
Right. Doing it,
yep.
doing my life. So yeah, I mean, there's been some exciting reach outs, like, of like, doing public speaking, like a speaking bureau reached out to me after the show. Nothing has come of that since then. But that was cool. And if anything, I think it's just given me some clout that I can use, to get in other doors. But overall, it was just an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful to have had it, and hopefully to have inspired at least one person.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, oh, Allyson, I was like beaming. I had chills the whole time. Like I said, you looked at home.
Yeah.
And that's why I say the word ready. I could feel it.
Yeah.
You've done so much to get to that moment. That didn't happen overnight. That took a lot of work,
Yeah.
a lot of sweat, a lot of experiences in life too, to get you to that place. So now take us to the right now. Talk to us about like what's important to you right now, and what are you working on in yourself that is important?
Yeah. Well, as a development junkie, I'm always working on myself. So the thing that I've really uncovered, and I mean, it sounds so simple and like obvious if you know me from the outside, is I'm committed to living a creative life, like at my utmost, like, what for, why, what am I on this earth to do? It's to be creative. So I'm committed to that. What I've been working on really, like, post Tamron Hall, is managing the highs and the lows, and managing these intense like bursts of accomplishments and performance opportunities, and the crash that comes for me after that. And recognizing, like, I did a singing gig a week ago, or last Friday, and the next day I was like comatose, like comatose. And I'm like, why am I so tired? Like, why do my feet hurt so bad? Like, why can't I move? I'm like, because I forget again, like, how much energy like performing takes. For those of you that facilitate, right? Like, it's similar, right? Like, after you have like a long facilitation day, like, you're usually drained of energy. But performing is like, even like, take that to an even higher level. So I'm really trying to create the structure that I need to get ahead of the lows and the crashes, and recognizing that I need a couple things set up to live that creative life, and to be at my best, and really to anticipate the crashes now,
Yeah.
so that they don't surprise me and like knock me on my ass so hard
Yeah.
that it takes me. I mean, literally post Tamron Hall. I mean, I think it took me like 2 weeks to recover. The amount of stress and energy that was put into those 2 weeks of everything from like making sure that I was eating like so clean and exercising and drinking gallons of water that I normally don't drink, to sleep habits, to vocal habits, to like everything.
Mm.
So yeah, so I know that I need space for my creativity. Um, I also need rest after, those big events or those big, performances. After the high, I need built-in rest time. I also need to constantly have creative projects that are mine. So one of the things I said on Tamron Hall, was that you don't have to be chosen to follow your dreams. And, I'm really trying to live that like, I don't need somebody else to choose me
Mm.
to do things that are creative, that fill my creative bucket. Um, I have multiple creative projects happening right now, and I have ones that are very long-term projects. And then the fun thing is when these short-term projects and gigs come up, like the singing gig last week at this art show. I was like, yeah, I need that too. I need the short-term projects, creative projects, and I need the long-term goals, because I need those like quick hits
Right.
of the creativity and the accomplishments and the performance for me, in between, especially while I'm working on like the really long-term projects that like I'm not going to get the full high, if you will, for months, from now.
I think of it as like it's like deposits.
Yes.
When you're living a big life and you're putting so much out into the world, and I think speaking personally, you forget you also need to receive.
Yeah.
And when you're out doing those things, even though you love them and they're coming from
Mhm.
your soul and you're very passionate, they're still incredibly draining.
Yeah.
And I realized that about 7 or 8 years ago is I'm very introverted.
Mm.
Even though I have a lot of extroverted tendencies, I have got to shut it off. And it came to me when I was doing a lot of traveling, back to back, kind of in person types of gigs. And I'm like, I am mentally spent. I don't know what's going on. And I had lots of therapist friends, and I happened to be with one that day. And she's like, started asking me questions. And she's like, what are you doing to refuel?
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you talking about? Isn't that what sleep's supposed to do? Can it do when I like, can it just work itself out without
Right.
you having
Right.
to do anything?" She's like, "No, no, no, it doesn't work like that."
Yeah.
Where are those the energy pumps and energy
Mhm.
drains in your life, and how are you tapping into them? I'm like, it was like a light bulb went off.
Yeah.
And then I started to track when I would come off these very, very big high energy days. And by the way, it isn't just as necessarily you go, you do your thing, you walk off. There's
Right.
all this residual stuff. I was like, oh my goodness, I need way more than I ever realized.
Yeah.
And before we started recording today, I shared with you how desperately I needed a break, almost to the point where the first 4 days I was gone, it was a train wreck. I couldn't find my balance
Mm.
because I'd let myself get to such a level of exhaustion and stress. It
Yeah.
took me a while to rebalance. So I'm just kind of highlighting that again. Anybody watching, listening, this is
Yeah.
resonating. You're going to put this amazing thing out into the world. That's your soul, that's your love, that's your baby. You also have to remember that you've got to rebalance yourself in that process and take care of
Yeah.
yourself the same way you're taking care of this thing you're birthing to the world.
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge you, Allyson, for saying it the way that you said it and with so much honesty and heart. And I want to wrap up today's conversation with, I've never asked you this question. I honestly have no idea how you're going to answer this. I'd love to know, like, who are those people you follow and
Mm,
that you you really admire, and why?
mm. Yeah, well, it's funny. My creative community, like we talked about before, is really big and really tight. And recently, I have several friends that are on Broadway that are going to be part of my project, that are part of my project, have been part of it from the beginning. And I I've always like idolized Broadway, and
Mm.
put it on this pedestal, and really getting like the real deal with my friends right now, especially many of them who are understudies on Broadway and standbys. My level of like complete and utter awe of what they do every week is like mind blowing. So, my one friend, Nick, he covers 5 roles on Broadway, 5. And at any given day, 8 shows a week, he could be called to play any of those 5.
Wow.
And before, he was prepped to play this one role this one weekend. And 15 minutes before showtime, he got called to play a different role, one of the 5 that he's prepared to play. And I just, and another friend also who covers like multiple roles in another show. And I'm just like, I'm talking to them after the show, and I'm like, you got to explain to me, like, how does your brain do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how can you, I'm like, do you feel like a schizophrenic? like, do you
Who am
walk
I? Who am I?
right?
Where am I
Who am
going?
I? Where am I supposed to be? Who am I playing? What am I singing? Um, and so I just have, especially in this like theater emerging post-COVID world where COVID is still a big thing, unfortunately, in the theater world, and people are still getting sick a lot. Like there's illness on Broadway, and so it's giving opportunities for understudies and standbys, which is amazing. And like I saw a show that like 10 of the people in the show that night were all understudies out of a cast of
Wow.
14. So who I'm inspired by right now is really like Broadway actors, and especially Broadway actors that are standbys and understudies, who have to just be so physically and mentally and emotionally ready
Mm.
to literally shift roles at any given moment. I mean, that's the joy and the thrill of live theater, is that anything can happen. Um, but I'm just so in awe of them, of like, and I look at myself and I'm like very self-aware. And I've been reading, what am I reading? Standout 2.0. I have to facilitate it this week, by Marcus Buckingham. And like it's a assessment around our strengths. And one of mine that came up was like, I don't like surprises. And I had to like sit with that for a minute and be like, yeah, you don't.
Mm.
Like, I like a plan. I
Mhm.
want to be prepared, you know? So just total awe and inspiration of my friends who are doing it 8 shows a week, like me, how exhausted I was from one night of singing. Like they're doing that 8 times a week, and they might be playing multiple characters that they're sifting through in their head, both physically, emotionally, and vocally. So that's who I'm inspired by right now, like the whole Broadway community. Like
Wow.
major props, major props.
Gives me so much room for pause to reflect on that. I never thought of all of the understudies. That is absolutely incredible. Just I can't even imagine what that's like. I also was thinking it's comparable to leaders running organizations right now,
Oh
having to
yeah,
wear 5 different hats, 10 different
yeah,
hats, balancing all of those things.
yeah.
I love that. And I love you, and I love this conversation. And I thank you so much for bringing this magnificent story to life. and being you and making it so real, so honest, and just so relatable to all different generations. And that's the other thing that I want to highlight here. And I can't wait to see what happens next. Like,
Me either.
what
Me
are you
either.
gonna be doing? Like, and going into the studio, I know the summer is going to be important for you too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
keep being you.
That's the plan. I mean, I can't go back to not being me. Like, as I say to my coach, I'm like, I'm a unicorn and I'm not in hiding anymore. So, I'm on the hunt for more unicorns, right? And those are my people, right? Like creative people and unicorns that are multi-passionate, that, are passionate and creative and talented in multiple different ways, and that need to be doing all the things in order to be filled up. So they need to be activating each of those unique parts to be them, to be the unicorns that they are.
Calling all unicorns.
Yep. Call me.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.